camping season is upon us. That means everyone I know is taking their RVs out of storage and taking them on their first camping trips. A lot of people this Easter weekend, which is when I'm recording this. So I decided to put together a list of 20 things that you need to do when you're taking your RV out of the winterized stage into the dewinterized or camping stage. And this list is 20 things, but it's still not all inclusive. There may be specific things that you do that you think aren't on this list. So I definitely challenge you to comment below if you think there's something that you would do that is not on this list. And also I encourage you to read the comments, because this list, which I'm going to put in the description, is there for you to use as a checkoff list when you go out to your RV. But also the comments are likely going to have some additional points that I missed. So make sure you read all the comments as well and add your 2 cents. Now let's just jump into the list right away with the first thing you need to do when you check out your RV at the beginning of the season is a roof inspection. You need to carefully examine the roof for any cracks, any tears, any damage to the membrane whatsoever, any sealant around the vents that may have dried up or come loose. Check around the antennas, check around the seams, and if you find anything that's suspect, even if you're not sure if that's going to be a leak, you need to make that your top priority. Before you get to the other 19 things on this list, you want to focus on repairing whatever you found on the roof. The next rain's going to come, and the last thing you want is a leak or more leaks. So make sure you check that roof. Make sure you use any self-leveling sealant, or look online, watch a few YouTube videos on how to repair your roof, and get up there and knock that out first and foremost. Now, close number second is checking the body and all around the seals, the slide out seals, inspecting all the window seals, seeing if any of the caulking around the windows is starting to come loose. This is another area you really need to focus on. You may need to re-caulk some of the windows. I generally every year do at least some of my windows and doors, and over a year or two, I generally have covered the whole rig. After leaks from your roof, the next thing you need to worry about are leaks coming in through your windows, doors, or other storage areas. So check all your seals, make sure they're good. Number 3, pull out that awning and take a look. It's probably gotten a little wet and ugly over the season if you're parked outdoors, so you want to let it dry out. You want to maybe wipe it down. It's a good time to clean it or de-mildew it right off the bat if you get a chance. Again, check online. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Some people just use a mild bleach solutions. Some people use magic eraser. Really, you look online, find your best choice, but you want to knock that out early in the season. You especially want to knock this out while it's still kind of the early part of the season, because once it gets to be the middle of summer, whatever's on there is going to get baked in that hot sun. Next, it's time to check out your slide out and do any maintenance on it that you need to do, your periodic greasing, things like that. So if your trailer has slide outs, you want to inspect all the seals. You want to slide it in and out at least once or twice, and you need to check the maintenance schedule. It might be time to lubricate various mechanisms. Don't wing it here. Make sure you read the maintenance instructions for your particular slide out. There are things you should be greasing, and there's things you definitely should not be greasing. You don't want to mix those two up. So look back to your manual. All of these things are online, so you can get the manual online, but make sure you check your slide out for its full operation. All right, number 5 is one of the biggest areas for wear and tear, right? It's the tires. You want to check your tire pressure first and foremost, and you want to do a visual inspection around the whole tires, inside and out. Are there any cracks? Are there any bulges? Check the tire wear. It's best to get a little tire wear indicator. They're like a few dollars, but you can go and measure the outside, middle, and inside of your tire tread. Make sure that it's been wearing evenly. You might want to consider this is a good time to rotate tires, or maybe buy new tires. Remember, your tires are going to grow old and likely need to be replaced before the tread actually wears out. So don't use that as a measure. You should be especially suspect if you have the original tires that came with the trailer, regardless of their origin. Many of the blowouts I've seen and many of the blowouts I've experienced have been on those original tires that came with the trailer. So within a few years of buying your trailer, it's probably a good idea to put some fresh rubber on there that you've sourced and you know when it was mounted. And while you're looking at those tires, make sure you check the wheels. Look for any interesting rust or weirdness. You want to actually go and torque your wheels. This is the time of year where it's just good to start the season off with some good, fresh torqued wheels. Make sure you check your specs. For me, it's almost always between 110 and 120 that I shoot for when I torque. If you have the ability to jack up the trailer and spin the tires, that'd be a good thing to do just to make sure they're spinning freely. If you have a bearing buddy, or you believe in that system of injecting some grease into your bearing buddy, make sure you jack it up and spin the tire while you do it, and go for it. Just follow the instructions and don't put too much in. If you're getting any kind of looseness in there when you jack it up, and if the tires are wiggling a little too much, or if you're getting sort of a slow movement, some kind of impediment as you spin it, it's really probably time for you to get your bearings repacked. Either do them yourself or have somebody come and do them. I've got a single axle. I brought in a mobile repairman to do it. It took him an hour or less to do the whole darn thing. Yes, you can do it yourself, but sometimes it's nice to just pay a professional to knock it out. Did it right in front of me. I could see the work he was doing. Make sure you keep those bearings repacked. Don't forget about the Hitch and Connections. For towable trailers, you want to inspect the hitch, the safety chains, make sure the breakaway cable is solid and not frayed, and you want to check the electrical connector for any rust, damage, and proper function. It's a good time to clean out your electrical connectors and maybe add some dielectric grease if you use that. And this one's an easy one. Just check all the lights. Test all the exterior lights. Make sure you check the running lights, the clearance lights, check the turn signals, hook it up to your truck, check all the brake lights. Everything there is working order. If it's not, make a little list. Go make sure you replace those bulbs first thing in the season. If you've got LEDs, probably not burning out as fast as the old days when we all had the incandescents. Now we're going to come up with number 9, which is the propane gas system. Now here you want to check all your connections to make sure they're tight. You want to have a spray bottle with some dish detergent in there, and you spray it on all of the connections that you can to see if you see any bubbles whatsoever. Of course, if there's any significant leak, you're going to smell it as well. So, use your nose as well. But, check to make sure that you're not seeing any leaks when you turn on the propane in your system. And you want to turn on and test all your propane appliances that they're working. However, don't test the water heater yet until we get to, I think, number 14 coming up, where we're going to talk about making sure your water heater is full before you test your propane. But yes, you want to test your stove, make sure that the propane system is working. Maybe turn on your furnace and check to see if that's working. Okay, before we get into number 10, we're going to be going inside the RV now. So when you go in the RV, make sure your fridge is running. We're going to check back on that later. Now let's get on to number 10, which is ventilation. Maybe you should do ventilation before you test the propane. But nonetheless, you want to check that, make sure that the roof vents, if they open up, that you've opened them up, that the fan is spinning if you have a bathroom fan. You want to make sure there's no leaves or any kind of exterior tree stuff that might be impeding the vents from opening and closing. Make sure to also check your stove vent, which sometimes needs to be popped open. Make sure that that's working. Sometimes, you get little bugs making little nests in there. And while you're checking your ventilation, you might as well check that emergency exit. Every RV seems to have an emergency exit window, right? You want to just go and test, open it up, close it. Sometimes those seals get a little stuck over the season. So just pop it open once, make sure your emergency exit is working. Now let's talk about the water system. Number 11, it's time to flush out all that antifreeze. Assuming you used antifreeze, you want to flush the entire system by connecting the water to some city water and, basically filling the fresh water tank and running the pump and just flushing out all of the antifreeze out of the system. Make sure you open up all your faucets and make sure they're all running clear before you finish this process. If you leave just a little bit of antifreeze in the system, it'll kind of spread around and your water system will keep smelling like antifreeze. Also be careful with the water miser if you have one, because the water miser will put that antifreeze back into your tank. So generally I'm flushing my tank, but you're going to be doing that anyway when you come up on sanitizing that tank, which is coming up. Now, once you've been running your water through and you've dewinterized and gotten all the antifreeze out, at the same time, now that you've been using the plumbing system, you want to check for leaks. So make sure you leave the pump on, close all of the valves, and look around. Try to look under the sink. Look anywhere where you can spot the interior plumbing in your rig. Different rigs are set up differently, but you want to go find wherever you can. For me, it's behind my Nautilus water control system, underneath each of the sinks. Look behind the toilet. Look around maybe under the shower if you can see under the shower, and just make sure that you're not seeing any water. And here's a shortcut if you want to check on leaks. Technically, you should look everywhere, but if you have a leak and you have your water pump on and it's pumping from the tank, at some point in 20 minutes or an hour or whenever, you're going to start hearing it cycle at some interval, because basically some drips are coming out and then eventually the pump kicks on to repressurize the system. So I suggest you leave the pump on while you're doing some of these other things. And if you hear the pump cycle, especially if it cycles at an interval, say every 10 minutes or every 20 minutes. You'll hear it go just for a few seconds, then turn off. If it's doing that at a regular interval, then somewhere you're losing water pressure, and that means somewhere you've got a leak. It may not be that big of a deal, it may just be a slightly loose faucet, but you need to go find that leak. And if that pump is holding and you don't hear it cycling over an hour's period, you pretty much don't have a leak. I rarely walk around my rig with a flashlight looking at plumbing connections, seeing if there's a leak. I just listen for my pump. Okay, it's time to sanitize your water system. This is where you want to flush a diluted bleach solution through your tank. I'm not going to give the exact instructions here because really there are a few different techniques. I find a few different ratios of bleach to water, and I don't want to be responsible for your sanitizing your tank. So I'm going to suggest that you look at your manufacturer's suggestions or look online at the most common ways to do it. As long as you've got a decent amount of bleach and some water in there, you're going to be pretty good. You want to fill your whole system up. You want to fill all of the plumbing. You want to fill your tank as full as you can with this sanitized water. You want to let it sit for as long as you can. I usually let it sit overnight if I can, and then I'm going to flush it. I usually flush it at least twice to get that bleach smell out. And after 2 good flushes, I get the bleach smell out. But every time I flush, I make sure to open all the ports. I run the pump a bit. I make sure to really get the water out, and then I fill it up again. And so again, look online, find your own system that you feel comfortable with, but you should be bleach sanitizing your drinking system at least once in the beginning of the season. And to be honest, I have done it a second time and a third time over the years, especially if I have to put some suspect water in there that I wasn't too happy with. I'll just go ahead and re-sanitize the whole darn thing. So your water heater. Now, before you add any water or do anything, if you have an anode rod in your water heater, then you want to go ahead and pull your anode rod out, inspect it, and if you need to replace it, now is the time to do it while it's empty and fairly dry in there. Once you've put it back in, you can go ahead and fill up the water tank by turning off the bypass, letting it fill with water. You want to make sure the vent or the drain, depending on what kind of water heater you have, is closed. And then once it fills up, and on the classic water heaters with the anode rods, I would actually use the vent towards the end to sort of make sure that any air at the top gets out. See water coming out of the pressure release valve. I know we've got it filled here. And that's when I'll go ahead and test the propane water heater. So this is a good time to turn on the propane water heater, make sure that it's working, make sure that you're getting some hot water in your system. The first time you do it, there might be a bit of a sulfury smell to that hot water. So if that's happening, just flush it back out again after you've heated it up. And, flushing it a few times should solve that problem. You also might want to get a flushing wand. So when you have the anode rod out, there's a little attachment you can put onto a hose that you put into that hole, and it sort of helps flush out the water heater. So you get all the scale and funk out of your water heater that settles on the bottom. Now, by now, you probably have figured out whether or not your battery is operating properly with all this testing, but you want to go and actually test and check the battery itself. So go out there and check the charge, see how much charge it's holding. You want to check all the terminals to make sure there's no corrosion, that everything is tight, that everything looks clean. Maybe wiggle the wires a little bit. If this is a lead acid battery, you may need to check the water levels. Be very careful. That water in there is basically battery acid. You need to be careful, but you can pop that open. You can check to see if the water is in there, needs to come up to the right levels. You can top it off with distilled water. You can also get a little plastic device that checks the water's gravity, I believe is the way to say it, and it tells you how basically how much the water is holding a charge, basically, and whether or not the water is just bad. And usually it means the battery's bad, and it usually means that you let it get too dry and the cells were exposed to the air for too long. This is why we have lithium batteries these days. All right, let's take a look at the appliances. Now, we already tested the stove in theory when we tested the propane, but if you've turned on the refrigerator when you first got there, you can probably check it now. If not, turn it on. You can check a little later. You want to make sure that it's cooling down. Maybe check the microwave for a few seconds with a little cup of water or something. You want to test the air conditioner, make sure it's operating. You basically want to go through and check each and every appliance and make sure it's working. Whatever you've got, including the television, turn everything on that you can. Turn on every light inside that you can. Just try to check that. You don't want to be testing this on your first RV trip, finding finding out that's when it doesn't work. So you've already checked your water pump, you've now checked your water heater, you've checked your stove. And remember when we had you turn on the fridge earlier? Well, now you can go check to make sure it's actually cooling down, that the freezer is freezing and that the fridge is cooling. I always keep a manual, old school fridge thermometer in both the freezer and the fridge, just so I can monitor it with my eyes. Classic, no digital, no nothing. We're going to move on to number 17, which is the electrical system. You want to make sure you're plugged into shore power or plugged into a generator. You want to check all the plugs. I usually have a little work light that I keep in my RV, and I'll just go and plug it into each of the outlets, make sure they're working. Make sure you check the circuit breaker box and make sure all the circuit breakers are set up properly. And here's an important one, the safety devices. You want to go and check your smoke detector, your carbon monoxide detector, your propane detector. Sometimes these devices are all in one. You want to make sure that they're operating. You want to test them. You want to maybe check they all have expiration dates on the back or somewhere on them. You want to check to make sure they're not expired. They all do have expiration dates. A lot of these come with built-in batteries now that you don't replace. So when they're dead, they're dead. If you have a fire extinguisher, make sure to check the little window to make sure that the meter shows that it's still a valid fire extinguisher. Also, make sure if you have a first aid kit or any other safety devices or things unique to your health situation, that that's working, that that's effective, that you've got it there. It's an easy step to overlook, but it's very important. And number 19, it's time to clean it up here. You've been stomping around in there with your work shoes, fixing everything. It is time to clean the interior. Give it a fresh clean, remove all the dust, debris, all the things that have built up over the winter, all the dirt you've been stomping in there, working on it, fixing everything, getting it all ready. It's time to clean it up so that your first trip out, you've got a nice clean RV to start with. I also recommend at this time, if you restock basic things, this is a good time to stock. If you use paper cups and plastic cups, make sure everything's in place there. Everything but the food is the way I roll. And we sort of bring that in and keep it in its own box and its own containers in our trailer when we travel. So we don't bring any food in till the day of, but we keep everything else in there stocked. We make sure there's deodorant. We make sure there's shampoo, soap, everything we need, toothbrushes, toothpaste. All I want to be able to have to bring to my trailer is fresh clothes, maybe some fresh bedding if we just cleaned it, and some food. Outside of that, I want the trailer completely stocked, and this is step 19. You want to clean it and make sure it is stocked and ready to roll before you close that door. And either at the start or at the end of this, you want to give it a good wash on the outside too. It's probably got a whole winter's worth of grime, and you want to give this thing a wipe down. So either with some wet rags or with a hose, you want to wipe down what you can. Get those black streaks off that have started to form. I strongly recommend using black streak remover. It really works quickly and easily, but it is very destructive on decals and certain kinds of paint. So make sure you test it on your RV and make sure you don't let it run down. If you use that stuff, spray it on the rag and then wipe off the black marks, but do not just spray it on the side and let it run down, or you're going to get some really ugly streaking along your decals. I've learned this the hard way. That stuff is magic, but it will eat through colored things on your RV. And when you're done, make sure everything's locked up. Make sure you've turned off your propane. If you keep your propane tanks locked, make sure you got a cable lock through there. Double check every lock. I literally walk around my storage trailer twice every time. I check every lock and every door, and then I check every lock and every door again. And now you're ready to roll. It's time to go camping. The more your rig is set up, prepped, cleaned, maintained, and ready to go, the faster you can go between the thought that you want to go camping and hitting the road. You make that gap as small as possible by prepping your rig to its maximum ability. Some other things you want to do when you roll it away for the first time. Of course, we'll talk about that some other time. You want to check your brakes, do some other things the first time you pull that trailer out. But I'm assuming you're just visiting the trailer while it's parked for this one. Again, this list will be below in the description. Use it, copy it, print it out, maybe keep it with you, maybe just take a picture of it with your phone, whatever it takes. But it's a good place to start. When I get to my RV and I start doing maintenance, I find myself getting a little distracted by this or that. And if I don't have a list to go through, I can skip over a lot of the things that I think I'll remember, but when I'm dealing with surprises and fixing things, I'll just forget on the spot. So this list is really just to help you stay grounded and make sure you've knocked off everything. I'm sure you've got your own things you want to add to the list. Please do, and if you do, please comment below. I hope this was helpful. I hope you have a great camping season. We've got some great camping trips lined up here. Real shortly, I'm going to be out there, including a really big Alberta trip coming up. In fact, I'll be at the Alberta Outdoor Adventure Expo in Alberta, June 20th to 22nd. I'll be there offering a class to everyone who attends the festival on RVing, and I'm also going to be there hanging out and camping. So come find me, come say hi. It's an absolutely awesome event, and I'll put a link to it in the description. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, yeah?
You made it look so easy. Not so easy. Anyway, good job, dude. Really enjoyed watching you. Enjoyed this channel. Well done.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.